After weeks of frustration, backlash, and Twitter meltdowns, Honkai Star Rail has actually responded to player criticism regarding Update 3.0. I know, shocking. A gacha game developer listening to feedback, and not just that, HoYoverse, that billion-dollar company that is known to not have good communication with its players.
Once again, providing good, critical feedback has saved the game once again.
It is practically a historical event, and let me tell you, the reactions have been hilarious on this.
However, HoYoverse has shown us a lot of nice things in the past. Things like Genshin's artifact selector.
And this tidbit in my story review. So, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it's looking like they listen to me.
Mr. 𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗵 is out here doing the gritty over St. Tontas because the rank 1 Kuro bot didn't think this day would ever come. If you had HoYoverse addressing player concerns on your 2025 bingo card, congratulations. You just won a great achievement in gacha gaming. But jokes aside, credit where it's due, HSR devs actually acknowledge their mistakes and promise changes. That alone is a win. However, imagine if this were Genshin Impact. We would be witnessing something completely different.
So what I believe you were trying to say is thank you.
Thank you?
You're welcome.
What? No. I didn't. I wasn't. Why would I ever say that? I mean...
Maybe 20 free polls as an apology, but putting them at the second half so you can't use it for the new limited banner characters. Or if we're really lucky, the CEO himself bursting into tears on a live stream because the players dared to criticize them. So yes, progress is happening, but before we start celebrating, let's talk about why this happened in the first place. Let's be real, HSR fans essentially bullied the devs into change. And guess what? It worked. This is what happens when players hold developers accountable instead of worshipping them like they can do no wrong. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, isn't that toxic? Well, absolutely not. Bullying a multi-million-dollar company into fixing their predatory practices and low-effort content is not only justified, it's necessary. If no one complains, nothing changes. Simple as that. Because let's be honest, gacha games thrive off of complacency. They bank on players either being too loyal or too exhausted to fight back. And we saw that a lot happening in Genshin Impact. Now, there's nobody taking the survey seriously, and a lot of them are really content with absolute trash filler patches. But now we're seeing what happens when people actually demand better, and that is a huge step forward for the gacha community as a whole. With that being said, let's not get too carried away. I've read the devs notes, and while some of the changes sound good on paper, I can't lie, it feels way too overhyped. There's still a lot room for improvement, and frankly, I don't trust these companies enough to take everything at face value. So let's break this down. What is actually changing, and is it enough? Now this right here, this is the change that actually got people hyped. According to the Chinese dev notes translated by none other than Mr. 𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗵𝗵 himself, older units will get buffed. Now replaced with new, shinier 5-star versions, they are straight up buffing the characters themselves. So unless I'm blind or HoYo's lying, which let's be real, wouldn't be the first time, this means they're acknowledging a major issue in Honkai Star Rail's design, old units becoming completely irrelevant. And funnily enough, if we all just accepted that terrible take about how power creep is a player issue, not a company issue, we wouldn't even be getting this change. So I have to ask, is Mr. 𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗵𝗵 going to admit that he was wrong? Or are we all just pretending that never happened? But hey, this calls for a celebration, but before that, let's pump the brakes for a second. Because if we know HoYo, it's always going to be a disappointing change, yo. Sorry for the back joke. I think it's going to be a tiny buff, just enough to make them feel better, but not enough to actually make them competitive with the newest releases. Why? Because making old units too good would hurt new character sales, and HoYo is not about to risk that. If it's a major buff though, then I'll applaud them. Because right now, let's be real, there is absolutely no reason to pull for rerun characters unless they're absolutely cracked like Runmei or Rabbit. And before you argue, let's be honest with yourselves. If you're actually trying to clear endgame content efficiently, would you ever pull for a rerun unit? No, because the next broken 5-star is always right around the corner. That's the entire reason people don't roll on reruns unless it's a must-have unit. Most of the time, the endgame revolves around the newest characters anyway. I mean, look at what 𝗿𝗏𝗏 can do this patch. She is tier 0 in all endgame modes at E0S0. This buff announcement though, it actually gives hope to people who want to use their old favorites. Players who have been around since launch, who pulled and invested in these characters, only to watch them slowly rot in the corner of their account because they're just not viable anymore. But, and this is a big but, if you know what I mean, HoYo has a long history of pump faking its players. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Is this going to be a genuine buff or just another sinister tactic to bait players into spending again? If they're actually going to buff the characters directly, I'd be shocked, you know? Given HoYo's track record, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into another round of, oh, we meant buff as in give them an exclusive new light cone that you can get in the gacha banner or something. Well, so yeah, great news, but I'll believe it when I see it. So the devs have finally acknowledged what every Honkai Star Rail player already knew. The main story has way too much exposition and reading fatigue. Congratulations, guys. It only took took thousands of players button mashing cutscenes like they were speedrunning a visual novel to realize this. And in my opinion, and a lot of others, HSR has an incredible story, but his storytelling is really bad, like painfully bad. It's like if someone had the most epic high-stakes tale to tell but delivered it in the most monotone, boring voice imaginable. Oh wait, they're not even voiced. And what is the solution? Less talking and a partial skip feature? Wow. So instead of a 10-hour story quest, it's just 9 hours. How revolutionary. But here's the real issue. Not all players are here for the story, okay? HSR has always been a gacha game with a built-in identity crisis. It caters to casual players who just want to pull for cool characters, but it also expects those same players to sit through EO tweet length dialogue dumps. And that's just not happening, my guy. I mean, look at me. In Genshin, I pulled for 𝗵𝗁𝗵𝗁. I built my teams, but you know what? I didn't touch the story. Not because it's bad. I mean, it's subjective, right? I mean, listen, putting a motorcycle in a region with no roads couldn't be that bad, right? Sorry. It's like putting chocolate on pizza. It shouldn't go together, but it can be good for someone, right? Anyways, it's not because it's bad, but because staring at 10 hours of text is intimidating. And I know I'm not the only one. Plenty of players treat the story mode like an annoying side quest they'll get to eventually, but never actually do. In fact, I know a couple of friends who pay people to do these quests for them. And that to me is just really, really pathetic, HoYoverse. So while I appreciate the effort, I'm not convinced this is a real fix. This is just a band-aid and like a samurai slash rune. This is insane. And let's talk about the infamous black screen and white text issue. Nothing says immersive storytelling like dramatic music playing over a void of nothingness while the game dumps paragraphs of exposition on you. It's like watching a cutscene in an audiobook. Wow, what a horrible metaphor. These black screens aren't even voiced. The devs said that they're going to replace this system, but how? Are they adding actual cutscenes, or are we just getting a slightly fancier still images with text? Because let's be honest, if their grand solution is glorified PowerPoint slides, then this isn't really a fix at all. A much better alternative, let's say Zenless Zone Zero. That game has great storytelling format. It actually understands pacing. It uses cinematic angles, character movements, expressions, and visual cues to keep dialogue engaging, instead of throwing a wall of text at players and expecting them to care. If HSR took notes from that, then we'd be talking about a real improvement. But for now, cautious optimism. Maybe it'll make a difference, or maybe we'll just get more still images of 𝗖𝗍𝗍 looking mighty fine, while a dialogue box explains the activity I did with your mother last night. Who knows? Then we have the puzzle fixes. All right, finally, a win of common sense. The devs admitted that puzzles were too long and interrupted the story's flow. And you know what? That's exactly what we needed to happen. Listen, if I'm knee deep in the dramatic moment, if I'm immersed in the story because of the black and white text, I don't want to pause for 15 minutes to play Professor Layton, but worse. If you want hard puzzles, make them separate challenges, not forced roadblocks in the story. This is a fundamental design principle that somehow gets ignored in gacha RPGs. And before anyone calls this dumbing down the game, let's talk about my favorite game, Wuthering Waves. Because even in the very early stages of Wuthering Waves, like the Yinlin companion quest, that game lets you solve a puzzle if you want to, but also gives you an easy way out if you don't feel like doing it. That is how you handle puzzle design in a story-driven game, or rather, a story quest in the game. Give players an option to engage with complexity, not force it down their throats, like what I did to your mother last night. Also, can we talk about the meme? Apparently, they made this change because of Gacha Smack. If you don't know, Gacha Smack became the talk of the space for a little bit for complaining about the puzzles, spending too much time on it. And apparently now he's basically single-handedly responsible for this update, which is hilarious, but also proof that voicing concerns actually works. Here's the bottom line. Criticizing games isn't complaining. It's about making them better. This dev note, it proves that they listen. Your opinions matter. Your voice matters. But you know whose voice doesn't matter? The people who blindly defend these companies no matter what they do. They don't reward you for it. They don't thank you for it. There is no loyalty program for being a corporate lapdog, but holding them accountable, that benefits both you and them. It forces them to fix issues, improve the game, and ultimately create something you actually want to play. So yeah, keep calling those things out, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be getting these changes at all.